Hello everyone and welcome to the lesson number 2 of Unit 13 that is dedicated to European and national agricultural farmings. I am Giampiero Mazzocchi, agricultural economist, and I will guide you through this new video lesson. So, while in the first lesson we have seen the reason behind the public support to agricultural sector, in this lesson we will see more in detail the CAP, the Common Agricultural Policy, structure and general functioning. So we will explore what is the Common Agricultural Policy, why it is organized into 7-year programming periods. We will begin to see and to delve into the two pillars. So I will provide an overview of the two pillars, while in lesson 3 and lesson number 4 I will explore the pillar number 1 and pillar number 2. In the section 4 of this lesson, we will see the new implementation model that has been introduced from 2023, and we will take side to the CAP, the CAP budget in detail, and we will conclude with some reflection on the connection with multifunctionality, as it is the core of the My Farm project. So, what is the Common Agricultural Policy? The CAP is the European Union's policy that supports farmers and ensures food security for 447 million European citizens. So, as I've described in the first lesson, it is the first common EU policy, has been established in 1962. It provides a shared management between EU and member states. They have different competencies, but they are complementary to the adoption and to the implementation of the CAP. The CAP obviously is financed by the European Union budget, but there are some co-financing share for national authorities. It is organized into 7-year programming periods and covers all the 27 member states. And given these premises, we can observe that it is one of the most integrated and long-standing EU policies. Actually, some researchers, some important scholars state that CAP has been crucial for the integration of Europe and European policies. The CAP, the current CAP is organized in 3 general objectives. So there are 3 strategic pillars that we'll see more in detail. They also entail other specific objectives. There are 3 strategic pillars. The first one is the economic support. So it involves the historical objectives of the Treaty of Rome in the 1957, when the context after the Second World War imposed an increased food production, the stabilization of markets. Indeed, this first pillar, this first objective, is ensuring fair income for farmers and strengthen competitiveness. The second general objective entail environmental sustainability, so protecting an environment, combat climate change, preserve landscapes and biodiversity, while the third general objectives is about territorial development, so keeping rural areas alive, support employment and promote innovation. So these 3 objectives obviously are interconnected and complementary, as we will see later. This is another representation of the CAP objectives. On the left side, you see the 3 the three general objectives that I have just read. And on the right, you see the 10 specific objectives. There are three specific objectives for each general objective. For example, fair income and competitiveness and food value chain belong to the first general objectives, etc., etc. And then there is a knowledge and innovation objective that is called AKIS, that is the acronym for Agricultural Knowledge and Innovation System, that provide for advisory services, for innovations, and for knowledge sharing among farmers and food chain actors. In these specific objectives, we see that there are some new objectives compared to the past because, for example, rural areas development or food and health has been introduced as a new specific objectives. That it is an objective that was not present in the previous CAP programming periods. And also the climate and environmental objectives have been further explored and further developed in this programming period. Let's come back for a while to the CAP budget. This is an overview. So how much the CAP costs? I've already shown these figures, these key figures in the previous lesson, but I would like to come back to that because it is important to consider the entity and the importance of the budget that is covered by that is dedicated to CAP. So the total CAP budget for the current programming period is 387 billion euros, and it means that this is the 31% of the entire EU budget. The EU budget is provided by the multi-annual financial framework. That is a regulation that set all the money that will dedicate it to the old set of European policies. Indeed, the CAP is the second largest item after the cohesion policy. So, but we will see the CAP budget from an historical perspective. We see that it has moved from over 70% of EU budget in 1985 to the 31%, the current 31%. So the percentage has decreased, but the absolute amounts remain significant. That means that other items, other priorities, other objectives have been introduced in the European policies, but this doesn't mean that the CAP has loosened importance in terms of absolute sustain to farmers. The percentage in terms of the EU budget has decreased, but not only the absolute amounts of money. In this figure, you can see the blue line, that is the share of the budget dedicated to the CAP compared to the European gross domestic product. You see that on the right axis, the budget for the CAP is more or less 0.3% of the GDP of European budget, while on the left axis you see the amount in terms of billion euros. Okay, the billion euros has remained more or less stable. Obviously, it has decreased over years because other priorities were introduced in the European policies, but still it remains more or less stable. It is also important to see at the colors of the bars because you see that from 2000 in 2005 a decoupled direct payment system has been introduced, and it has gained more and more importance in terms of terms of budget dedicated. This is why because in the first years of CAP implementation until the first years of 2000, the payments were paid coupled to the production. So that meant that if a farmer produced more, he or she received more money. But for several reasons, but today we don't have time to delve into the reasons, the payments for the CAP, the bunch of the payment for the CAP have been decoupled. Okay. Also, it is important to see the rural development measures dedicated to environment and climate. That is the violet and white strings. It has increased over the years, and also rural development budget has remained stable, but it has been reinforced after 2000. In terms of budget breakdown by category, let's look at where the money goes. Okay, the most of the money, the most of the budget of the CAP is dedicated to Pillar 1. So approximately 72% of the budget of the CAP is dedicated to direct payments and market measures. They include direct payments to farmers, market intervention measures, and sectoral programs. 1/4 of the budget is dedicated to rural development. That means 95 billion euros. In this context, in the rural development, as I anticipated before, there is a co-financing that is required for national or regional managing authority. And then there are also some horizontal measures, approximately 22 billion euros, so more or less the 3 to 5% of the budget that is dedicated to food safety, research, advisory services, and communication. I would like to see with you also how much the CAP cost for each European citizen. Okay, in our yearly expenses for expenses, we have to consider that in taxes, 123 euros are dedicated to the CAP. That is approximately half of a coffee per day, so 0.34 euros per day that we pay for the functioning of the common agricultural policy. All the policies are financed by a complex systems of payments made by member states, and so it is also important to consider that we are contributing directly to the functioning of the CAP. As we have seen from the first lesson, this amount of euro we pay for the functioning of the CAP provides food security for ourselves, stable supply. This money provide for environmental protection and landscape management, and also for the maintaining of vibrant rural areas, high quality and safety standards, and also the support for 10 million farms that without this public support could abandon the countrysides, the rural areas, and no one could be able to produce food. In the CAP, there is a very complex performance indicator. One of the main novelties of the current programming period compared to the previous one span from 2040 to 2022. So comparing to the previous period, in this period there is a much more attention to results, to impacts, to performance of the CAP, and not only on the compliance of the obligation for farmers. There is a set of indicators that are output indicator, result indicators, and impact indicators that are valorized annually by the member states and then aggregated at European Union level to assess the performance of the CAP. So to evaluate how much, to what extent the CAP is achieving the impact that it has set. So let's look at the 7-year programming period. How does it work and what does it mean? So the programming cycle, let's see how the CAP is organized over time. The 7-year cycle of the CAP is motivated by the alignment with the EU budget. So the previous cycles, as I mentioned before, was from 2014 to 2022. The current cycle will conclude in 2027, while the next cycle will begin in 2028 and finish in 2034. So why 7 years? There is also not only financial and compliance with EU budget reasons. There is also a reason motivated by the nature of agriculture, the implicit features of agricultural sector, because in 7 years there is it's a sufficient long-term planning security time frame for farmers, because it is needed time for reforms, for CAP reforms, and also for CAP regulation and novelties to show results. Also, there is obviously an alignment with the EU multi-annual financial framework, and also the 7 years programming period also guarantee stability for investment that are made by farmers. In the current governance model of the CAP, there is a multi-level framework, as the decision-making process range from European regulation to national and sometimes regional level. So let's look at the different levels and competencies. So the European Commission proposes the CAP regulation and the general framework that has to be respected and complied by the member states. So the European Commission sets the overall objectives and budget and defines the mandatory requirements. And then there is a co-decision mechanism that was introduced after the Treaty of Lisbon in 2007, that is the approval by the European Parliament and Council. This rule was introduced to guarantee that the CAP is voted and discussed and voted also by representatives of European citizens and European governments. So European Parliament and European Council co-decide on CAP regulation. They approve the legal framework, and because they represent citizens and member states. Once the regulation have been approved and published, member states in this programming period had to develop national strategic plan. So each one strategic plan for each member state. Okay. In this framework, in this strategic plan, member states have to choose specific intervention within EU framework. So considering the regulation and the general framework set by the regulation, and member states must implement and manage the CAP. In some countries, for example in Italy, the regional authorities have the competencies for agriculture. So they manage most of the measures, and most of the interventions are managed by regional authorities. They have the possibility to adapt the measures and to regional needs. Actually, in this current period, the role of regional authorities is has decreased compared to the past, because the only authority that is demanded to dialogue and to exchange with the European Commission are the member states, so the national authority, while the regional authorities can develop their own specificities in certain documents, where they can set, for example, additional obligations, additional mandatory requirements. They can define more in detail certain practices, certain typology of farmers, for example, but they must write their regional plans very strictly according to the national strategic plan. So, what is this strategic plans, and what does it contain? The CP strategic plan is a single strategic document that combines both Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. So, direct payments, market measures, and rural development interventions. So each member state prepares its own plan, and there is a very long and complex process, and I have taken part of this process to prepare this plan. Also because it is involved a large number of stakeholders through a partnership table, so working groups that must decide on certain intervention, on certain eligibility conditions, on certain or more general on the structure of the CAP plan. It is important to see that the strategic plans are based on SWOT analysis and needs assessment. For example, my research center, the CREA, prepared most of the SWOT analysis and need assessment for the Italian Ministry of Agriculture to communicate what are the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats of the agriculture sector in Italy. And also we have defined the needs through a participatory process involving national and regional stakeholders. So the CAP strategic plan is tailored to national agriculture context. What are the contents? The contents are intervention strategies for each of the 9 specific objectives. If you remember the slide with the circle with the 9+1 objectives. The CAP plan provides for the types of support and eligibility conditions, the financial allocations, the target values for the result indicators. If you remember well, result indicators are one of the most important novelties of the current CAP in order to assess its efficacy, its capacity to achieve objectives. And also there is a description of governance and coordination, so who does what, and what are the roles in managing all this complex system of public policy. The strategic plan is delivered to European Commission and approved by European Commission after their assessment. I would like to highlight how much big are these documents. For example, this is the last update of the CAP strategic plan for Italy. 4,478 pages. So it is huge because you have this description of interventions. Consider that we have more than 170 interventions. And you saw in the plan they have described very accurately in detail. You have a lot of tables, you have a lot of information, and the plan is a huge document that is very complex to be navigated. One of the main, the other main novelty for the current programming period is the greater flexibility for member states. So flexibility in the European Union is a sort of synonym of subsidiarity principle. So subsidiarity means that something has to be decided from the proper governance level. For example, the state level for agricultural sector has been considered the most appropriate one for agriculture. So member states can decide in their CAP strategic plan which interventions to implement, obviously to a certain extent and in compliance with the regulation on CAP plans, the payment rates and the conditions, the regional differentiation, the balance between objectives, the co-financing rates for rural development. As I mentioned sometime in the first lesson and also in this lesson, rural development resources have to be co-financed by the national states. So it means that the 95 billion euros for rural development become more because of the co-financing rates provided by the national authorities. But member states cannot change the overall CAP objectives. The minimum budget allocation, that is called in technical language, is called ring fencing. So it means allocating a certain percentage of the resources to certain objectives or to certain typology of interventions. For example, in the CAP, 25% of the direct payments must be devoted to eco schemes. We will see later in the third lesson what are eco schemes. Also, member states cannot change basic conditionality requirements and the monitoring and evaluation framework. So this means that the result are 27 different CAP implementations adapted to local, in particular national contexts. In this framework, what is the role for the European Commission? The main role is to oversight and to support. So before the implementation, they assess and dialogue and approve national strategic plans. They ensure compliance with the EU law and they verify consistency with the CAP objectives. During the implementation, the European Commission monitor the performance and the spending of the CAP, provide technical assistance, conduct audits and controls to check if the payments are directed properly and coherently to farmers, and the Commission also approve annual performance reports. So there are also continuous activities. For example, European Commission facilitate exchange of best practices, support innovation and research, communicate CAP achievements, and propose adjustments if needed. So European Commission is very important for the CAP, but as we have seen before, European Parliament and European Council, they have a very important role when it comes to approval and discussion of the CAP regulations. It is important also to understand very practically how the CAP works year by year. In January and between January and March, farmers prepare applications and advisory services provide guidance. Usually the 15th of May is in Italy, but also in other member states is the deadline for sending the aid applications. And also there is a declaration of land use and practices. Between June and September, administrative checks are performed by a paying agency, and there are some on-the-spot inspections based on a sample to check on the field the real implementation of certain measures, of certain interventions by the farmers. Between October and December, there is the payment of direct payments to farmers. And the annual performance report is prepared by the national authority. And while rural development project calls, they are open variably during the year, and their projects are selected and paid during the year, depending on the region, depending on the type of call, depending on the specific context. So there is an ongoing activities connected to rural development. While all the time frame that I've shown to you from January to December regards mainly the direct payments. So who does what in this context? At EU level, European Commission, especially the Directorate of Agriculture, design the policy and oversight the process. The European Parliament exerts democratic control, and the Council of Ministers represent member states in this process. At national level, the Minister of Agriculture has the overall responsibility for the CAP strategic plan. There are some paying agencies that manage the financial aspects and the payments, and there is a coordinating body for the paying agency that monitor and report the payments. At regional level, in some countries, for example in Italy, regional authorities have the possibility to tailor the implementation of the CAP, and at sub-regional level, the local action groups that are provided under the LEADER program, they develop bottom-up activities through the involvement of private sector, of research agencies, of public institutions and local authorities to build some local strategic action plans. So in this complex system, a very strong coordination is essential for the effective implementation of the CAP. So in this section, I will take an overview of the two pillars that constitute the CAP. As I already said several times, Pillar 1 is dedicated to direct payments and market measures, and also to sectoral intervention in some countries. In the pillar, so direct payments cover the largest share of the resources for the Pillar 1. In the current programming period, there are different typology of payments for farmers. So there is a basic income support for sustainability, so a payment that is provided for hectare, provided that the farmers comply with the conditionality rules. There is the redistributive payment that is dedicated to small and medium farms. In Italy, this payment is provided to farmers that have until 14 hectares. There is a payment for young farmers to promote generational renewal in the sector. There are eco schemes, so environmental and climate interventions for enlarging the share of farmers that put in place agroecological and environmental benefiting practices. And also there is a couple of supports to specific sectors that are suffering or are tackling crisis. There are some sectoral interventions that follow operational programs, so that follow separate mechanisms, but they cover, for example, fruit and vegetables, wine, hops, olive oil and table olives, and beekeeping. Also, there are market measures that regard a very important aspect that is increasingly important, the crisis management, and to a lesser extent the public and private storage. So pillar one, how it works. So the financing is guaranteed 100% by the EU budget through a specific fund. No national co-financing is required, while the co-financing is required for rural development and pillar two measures. So in this case, we have a predictable annual allocation per country because the payments are made dividing the resources for the hectares that are admittable to the payment. So there are some eligibility conditions, for example, active farmers that are defined by member states. There is a minimum land area to receive payment. You have to manage at least 1 hectare. You have to be compliant with the conditionality rules. So the annual payment is based on the declared hectares. And in the pillar one, the payment are mostly area based. So you receive a certain amount of euros depending on the member states per hectare. So this is a direct transfer to farmers' bank account. So this is why one of the synonym of the pillar one is direct payments, and usually they are paid between October and December. There is a very important control system to guarantee that what is declared by the farmer exists in the reality. So there is an integrated administration and control system, a land parcel identification system that are based on satellites that provide some very high quality photos to see what if the farmer is respecting, for example, conditionality, or is producing what he has declared, or maybe he has not changed the land use. So it is a satellite monitoring, and there is a cross checks with other database at national level. So the administrative control system is performed on the totality of farms that ask for subsidies under the pillar one, where the on-field controls are made on a sample of farms. Pillar 2 is about rural development. So rural development covers competitiveness, so farm investments and modernization, young farmer startup aid, advisory services and training, innovation and cooperation. But also in the rural development measures, you see, for example, agro-environmental climate measures to support the transition, the ecological transition of the agricultural sector. Organic farming support. So in the rural development, you have the specific support to farmers that have organic lands, forest management and protection, animal welfare payments. Also, in the rural development measures, you see payments for areas with natural constraints. Leader, that is the bottom-up approaches for local development. Also, very importantly, rural development also pays for basic and investment for basic services and infrastructures in rural areas in order to maintain the rural areas attractive and vibrant. And also, in the rural development, there is a need for village renewal and generational renewal. So, key characteristics of the Pillar 2, the EU resources are co-financed with national and regional budgets. The co-financing rates vary by the degree of development of the regions, from 43% to 85% for the less developed regions. That means that That means that the less the regions are developed, the more is the co-financing by the European Union, obviously, to reduce the financial burden to national states. The eligibility conditions varies by intervention type. They can include farmers, businesses, municipalities, NGOs, so not only farmers. So the rural development plans and interventions, especially they are dedicated to the whole stakeholder that enter into the system when we talk about food systems and agricultural systems. Usually, while the direct payments are paid annually, in the rural development, very often you have multi-annual commitments. Also, for example, for agro-environmental climate measures, you have to guarantee a certain practice for example, 5 years. The reimbursement is made after the investment completion, and this is a barrier for some farmers to access rural development measures, because farmers must anticipate the most of the investments. So the management is regional or national, depending on the member state. It is based on competitive calls for proposal. So yeah, the application is much more complex than Pillar 1. In the Pillar 1, you have to declare your parcels, your lands, what you want to do on those lands. In the Pillar 2, you have to demonstrate the validity of your project. You are subject to a competitive process with other projects, so it is not so easy to access Pillar 2 resources. So comparing the two pillars, okay, the budget share more or less is 70% for Pillar 1 and 30% for Pillar 2. The co-financing is provided required only for Pillar 2, so from 43% to 85%, depending on the member state. The payment type is annual and automatic for Pillar 1, while is multi-annual and selective and subject to competitive competitive calls. The focus of the Pillar 1 is more on income stability, but yeah, we have to recognize that also agro-environmental objectives have been introduced, for example, eco schemes. While Pillar 2, the focus is the structural change of the farms. The beneficiaries are individual farms for Pillar 2 and diverse actors for Pillar 2. For Pillar 1, individual farmers. For Pillar 2, diverse actors, so also municipalities, NGOs, or other actors along the food supply chains. The application is simpler for Pillar 2, while it's more complex for Pillar 2. Flexibility in Pillar 1 is limited, because you don't have so much flexibility to adapt your aid application. The management level is national for Pillar 1, while it is very often regional for Pillar 2. And the time commitment is annual declaration for Pillar 1, while on Pillar 2 you have to provide for multi-annual projects. Okay, while in the previous system, in the previous programming periods from 2014 to 2022, Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 were programmed separately. They were subject to different legal frameworks. There was a limited coordination and potential overlaps or gaps. Well, in the new system, there is a single CAP strategic plan per member state, with an integrated approach across both pillars, a unified governance structure, better coordination and coherence, and a common performance frameworks. Obviously, this has led to some benefits, because it is more simple for member states to manage all this complexity. It is easier for farmers to find information and to navigate the information despite the length of the documents. As we have seen before, more than 4,000 pages are not simple to navigate, but obviously then you have regional implementation and plans that are shorter, hopefully. You have a more effective achievement of objectives and a better use of available resources. So I will stop my lesson here. We will start the third lesson starting from the new implementation model, and then we will see more in detail the direct payment and the first pillar interventions. Thank you for your attention.